Hello, and thank you all for joining me again here today on Hastings County for another Galaxy 24. Today we're going to be hopping into a classic interpreted in a new way. So let's go ahead and explore the cosmos today. Hello everybody, and thank you all for joining us again here today on Hastings County, again for Galaxy 24. Today we are going to be continuing this series exploring the creation of space in which to explore, whether you're staying inside a single system or, like in the case of many science fiction games, of course, exploring throughout the galaxy. So for those of you who have been following me for a long time, you know that Traveler actually was my very first role-playing game. And this, of course, is one of the very original sort of World and Adventures books. So this actually has the very basic original world and star mapping system that was created to go with Traveler. So, of course, you all knew that this system was probably coming up. However, today we're not actually going to be exploring this structure. We're not going to be using that. Rather, we're going to be using what you see over there. And this is Cepheus Universal. This is one of the most recent versions of from Zozer Games that is exploring the basic structures built on the Cepheus engine. I guess you could say an OGL adaptation of the 2D6 system that Traveler itself is built on. So of course it contains a lot of the same basic structures. Now before we hop into the actual creation, there was one or two things I did want to go ahead and talk about related to this. The first thing was obviously the fact that because this is a 2D6 system, pretty much all of our stuff is going to involve 6-sided dice. So there is that. Within this particular system itself. The other thing I wanted us to talk about real quick is that as a part of this process, we are going to be essentially utilizing what you see here, the universal world profile, a lot. So here, give me 1 second. Let me move this out of the way real quick. Now, I wanted to explain this and exactly what this is real quick before we actually hop into the character creation or the actual system that exists in Cepheus Universal, because it also is based a lot around creating very similar things to this. So you will see here that I have a 9 alphanumeric code that go from 0 to 9, and then from A all the way to Z if you need numbers bigger than 9. That applies to all of these with the exception of the spaceport. So basically all of these, by taking a look at this code, this is a code that you would use to describe a planet within a system or the primary planet within a system if there's only like one inhabited planet, which normally when you're creating something in Traveler, there would only really be one really interesting location, maybe two. So here basically we would have the description of the spaceport. The lower the letter, the better. So A obviously would be the best, and then going all the way down to, let's say, I think it's Y is basically there's no spaceport here at all. So of course this would obviously be of great interest to someone who's exploring the space. And then going from here over, we have the size of our planet so this is 7, means it's it's actually slightly smaller than Earth. Atmosphere. 8 would be basically it's a dense standard atmosphere, breathable atmosphere. 7, this is hydrosphere. This fourth number here. So this of course would be pretty standard to Earth, so it's 70%. Population. This is the number of people obviously that live on this planet, and this goes up in a logarithmic scale. So 7, that would basically be somewhere in the millions. Government, this connects to a code that basically, so this code, this one 4, is, if I remember correctly, I think it's representative democracy of some sort. Law, is basically this is like just like the level of restriction that exists on the people within the society, and then here at the end is tech level. So this would be pretty advanced. D is beyond the is a little bit beyond the average sort of technology that you expect to see in a traveler game amongst the different aliens, Sophans they call them, and humans that you might encounter there. Yeah, so that is a basic so basically you would have this code for every single planet that you would ever create utilizing this sort of the system that you would normally find in Traveler. However, of course, this leaves a lot out. So yeah, we've got government law and tech level, but what about the economy? What's it based on? What does it look like? How does it work? What does trade look like? Yes, our law is 5, but that number normally just means how restrictive like information and weapons and stuff are in this society are. That doesn't really tell us anything about like what the people think about certain things or interactions with the outside world or stuff like that. So this leaves lots of gaps. And there are extensions to the Universal World Profile that were specifically created to try to compensate for some of these missing things. So we're going to be creating using the Cepheus Universal system. So again, if you'll take a look over there, you'll see in this section here where it's talking about the ways that you might write the information onto your map with special symbols and stuff, assuming you're using hex like normal. And again here, this kind of explains just the basics of the Universal World Profile that I had just mentioned. This has a slight extension where the N added there just means that there's a naval base on this location. Agricultural just is telling us like what type of world it is. R means that it's in a quote-unquote red zone, which means that there is potentially, this is like a sort of dangerous part of space. The G means that there's a gas giant somewhere in the system. So again, this would be a code that you would use for a system as opposed to a single planet. And then, of course, we have the 0105 there next to the name City Prime would be the actual hex code where you would find it on your map. So here we start by just going into some of the elements that we would use to actually create our planet, but we're not actually going to do that right this second. Instead, actually, we're going to hop over here to system generation. So yeah, basically what we would do is each system will contain a minimum of 1 star and 2d6 plus 2 planetary bodies. These bodies will then, of course, be located in orbits between 1 and however far away it is. So 0 orbit would be the actual star itself. So it notes that we are going to go ahead and roll our 2d6 plus 2, which I rolled a 7. So that means that we would have 9 planets. So this is going to be our last one right there. So we have one between 1 and 9. Now, of course, it says here the main world is placed next and its location determines the habitable zone of the system. You will notice that so far we have not created the actual star itself. We've not gained any information about what type of star this system is other than there's just one. This system generation system does not have us do that. So we need to determine exactly which orbit it should be in. So it says we should roll 1d3 plus 2. So I rolled a 2, which means that would be 1. Which means we're going to mark our boundary being right here, where this planet right here is in the habitable zone. So our boundary between the inner system and the outer system will be right here. So basically, when we hop back to the actual planet creation system, this is the planet that we're going to be making, and I'm just going to need to try to make sure that this one should be the habitable one right here. Next thing is gas giants. Now, of course, gas giants are potentially common. It asks us to If they are present, then roll 1d6 to determine their orbit. On a roll of 6, that must be re-rolled, and one of the re-rolled gas giants has to be placed in orbit 1, basically representing a very close hot Jupiter. Then other gas giants are placed by counting out from the main world. So basically we'd go here. Anything, of course, that already has something else in its orbit is just going to get canceled out. If the orbit is occupied by the main world, then you roll a 1d6. On 4 to 6, then the main world is actually a moon of one of the gas giants. Otherwise, the gas giant is placed a little bit further out. Okay, so let's see here. So we're going to go ahead and roll our 1d6. And again, we got 9 orbits to work with, so we got lots of places where they could go. And I rolled a 3. So presumably, we have a gas giant here, here, and here. Now, the rest of it, it says, for each remaining planetary body that has not already been identified as a gas giant or as a star, right? Our star goes here. We need to go ahead and roll a 1d6, and then if we roll a 6, that orbit is actually occupied by a asteroid belt as opposed to a standard planet or whatever. So 4, 5, 1, 3, 2 more. 6, 3. Okay, so this is an asteroid belt. Alrighty. Now, for each of the remaining planets, what I need to do is go ahead. I'm going to be rolling on the middle table on the page there, where we're going to be figuring out what the other planets should be. So if I would either be a rock or ice ball, depending upon if it's here or here, a hellhole, or a desert. So I'm going to go ahead and roll. All right. Now, on the table down here, it says we can generate additional information about these planets. It says the designations are used and more fully described in the Creating World section on page 281, which, of course, we already talked about. We'll hop past this for the moment. So now that we've figured that out, we'll go ahead and hop back over to this main world right here, and we'll start sort of building out what we need to know about it. Yeah, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to need to determine the actual world size. So it says actually here that the first thing we should do is actually roll a 1d6 before we roll on our table. Because what we're going to do is, it says basically if we roll a 6, then our planet is a super Earth, and we'll be rolling a different roll number on this title. I rolled a 4, so that's not the case. The reason why they have us do that is because a lot of solar systems close to the Earth, we of course have seen super Earths because, of course, we have that advanced technology to be able to do that. But smaller planets are, of course, more difficult to see. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll on the bottom of the table on that page over there, is we're going to roll a 2d6 minus 2 to determine the actual size of our planet. At least that's what we normally would do. I want this to actually be a somewhat habitable planet, so for this particular case, I'm actually going to go ahead and just pick something. So for this one, I'm just going to go ahead and make it an 8 in order to make it somewhat Earth-like, which you'll see there. An 8 means that the diameter of the planet is about like 12,800 kilometers, which makes it the standard size of Venus or Earth. However, I will go ahead and roll on our table for our rocky planet up here, which you'll notice I rolled a 6, which minus 2 would be a 4. So this planet is about the size of Mars. This planet also is not going to have a system, so I'm going to, or a starport, so I'm going to go ahead and write an X there. We don't know about our main world yet, though. And finally, if you look over on the table, you'll notice that if we rolled anything higher than a 16, which is highly unlikely, we would end up with a megastructure, where we would mark a Z. If we rolled a 0, then we would probably have a space habitat of some sort. This section here, it kind of just talks a little bit about the megastructures, the space habitats, the density of planets, volcanism, rotations. It doesn't actually have us roll anything here. It's just having us think, and habitation, of course. It's just having us sort of think about these things. So we're going to go ahead and roll on the atmosphere table now. Because we have an 8 for our size, we are going to go ahead and add. Actually, no, I'll go ahead and roll for our rocky planet first because we picked a 4. That means we're actually going to subtract 5 from this, which means there's a pretty decent chance, because we're rolling a 2d6, that we're going to have either a very thin atmosphere or none at all. You will see that I rolled an 8. Which means minus 5, means we have a very thin atmosphere with 3. That is an atmosphere that's only about 0.1 to 0.4 to 0.42 standard Earth atmospheres, which means that you wouldn't need to necessarily wear like a vacuum suit or something to survive there, but you definitely would have to wear a pressurized mask in order to be able to breathe, just because of the lack of air, and that's assuming, of course, it had enough oxygen in the atmosphere to begin with. For our habitable planet here, I'm just going to go ahead and let's just say it's a 5. 5, you'll note over there, is somewhere between like 4.3 and 0.7 atmospheres of pressure, which means it's pretty thin. Basically, this would be similar to living at some high altitudes, as opposed to being like completely exposed. And of course here, this is a section sort of explaining pressures and stuff like that. Tainted atmospheres, extreme atmospheres, what might make them extreme, different types of gases you can find in atmospheres, and so on. So now we're going to move on to the hydrographics, which again, this is basically talking about like what the percentages of like fluids on the planet's surface, particularly focusing on water. So again, if we have a size of 0 to 2, then our hydrographic condition will automatically be 0 no matter what. We rolled a 3, and it says there if we have an atmosphere of 2 or 3, an atmosphere of B or an atmosphere of C, which those are some of those unusual tainted planet gases and high pressure atmospheres, we have a -6. But we don't have any of those, so it'll be for our rocky planet here, it'll be whatever I roll, which in this case was an 8. So it actually has a really high amount of water on it. It's a very wet planet, which is actually, yeah, this would have even more water on it than Earth. And then for our main world, I actually rolled a 6. So that means we have some really large oceans and stuff, but it's not quite to the level of Earth. And then, of course, here we're talking about like wet worlds, dry worlds, water worlds, and what building settlements and things on those planets might look like. All right, for our next one, it is population. Again, a world's population is generated by rolling 2d6 minus 2 and adding any of the conditions over on the table. So here we have, for our main world, we have an atmosphere of 6, so we don't need to worry about that. In fact, we add +1, and our size is not greater than A or less than 2. So for this, we'll just roll a standard one of these, and I rolled a 5 minus 2 means we have a 3. So we only have like, there's only like, there's less than 10,000 people living on this planet. Somewhere between 1,000 and 10,000 people. So it's not very populated. For our rocky world right here, actually this is starting to shape out like we might actually want somebody to live here. So I'm not going to actually remove that. I'm going to remove that. Instead, I'm going to actually go ahead and roll and see if we potentially have somebody living here. Oh, and I rolled actually a 10, which is weird, but okay. So that would see minus. So again, we don't have an atmosphere that is 5, 6, or 8, so we'll be subtracting 1. Actually, sorry, I forgot to add the +1, so this actually should be 4. So 7. There's actually more people living on this inner rocky planet than there is on our main world, which is weird, but okay. So now we come back to the beginning of our number when we take a look at our starport. So again, basically, we're going to be rolling a 2d6 minus 7, and then adding the world's population value to it. So we roll 2d6 minus 7. So here in this case we have an 8. We'd have a 1. So here we have an 8. So this would have a C starport. So again, this would be a routine starport. We can get unrefined fuel there, but not refined fuel. So not all ships can necessarily use it. They can they can do reasonable repair level on this planet, not rebuilding ships or building whole new ships out of nothing. No shipyards or anything here, and they potentially could host a scout. For our other planet here, this one's actually potentially going to have an even worse starport in it. I rolled a 6. So let's see, 6 minus 1. Sorry, mix 6 minus 7 would be -1. And then we add 4, that would be 3. So this one would have a very, very basic starport on this planet. Basically, no fuel here, can't build or do major repairs here. There's no scouts here. There's just nothing there. It's basically like an empty field you can land a ship on. And not much better than that. So for our next thing, again, we are going to be rolling the government. So for our main world, I rolled a 6 minus... So basically what they want us to do is we roll 2d6 minus 7, add the population. Can't be higher than 15, but can't be any lower than 0. So I rolled a 6. I'll go ahead and do it for this one. I roll a 6 minus 7, that'd be -1. Plus we have a 6. So here we have a captive government. And basically what a captive government would be basically a government where, some sort of, it has a structure, but some sort of like corporate interests or something has kind of taken over its basic structure. For our main world, I rolled an 8. Minus 7 would be 1. And then we add 4. So that'd be 5. So 5 would be a feudal technocracy. So basically that is, again, it's a feudal structure, but there's a lot of technology and stuff involved in things. So essentially that would be kind of like the Dune universe, if you can imagine that one. Next would be our law level. Again, here we're going to be rolling 2d6 minus 7 and then adding this the government number that we just determined. So for our rocky world here, I rolled a 7. So of course 7 minus 7 is 0, plus 6 would mean we have, again, another 6. So that would be medium law. In particular, this means that pretty much most forms of firearms are banned, and carrying weapons like publicly is generally discouraged unless you have some legal reason to do so. So basically a lot of, there's restrictions on weapons and stuff. There might be some restrictions on sort of, information and stuff on this particular planet. For our main world, I rolled a 6. Again, that's 6 minus 7, so that'd be a -1. And then here we have a 4. And the 4 is again, this is a medium form of law. Essentially, this means that light assault weapons and some machine guns are banned, but other forms of weapons and stuff are legal. So in this particular case, that might be kind of like, I don't know, the United States, or something like that. So next we hop into our technology level. So again, tech level is determined by the big giant table that you see over there. basically, in this case, we're going to be rolling 1d6, and then we're going to be adding a number of different modifiers that you see there. So for our rocky planet here, we are going to be adding +2 because of our spaceport, +1 because of the size of our planet, +1 again because of the atmosphere of our planet. And again, all of this is just because obviously if some form of being, a living being, is surviving on this planet, then that means we have to have somewhat advanced technology in order to be able to make it. I think that's it. Yeah, that's all that we're going to be adding to this. So I'm going to roll a 1d6 and add +4. Oh, and then of course, for stellar planets, we'll go ahead and add an extra +1 because it mentions there for average stellar settings we add +1, for high stellar settings add +2, for beyond stellar settings you add +3. So basically let's make it basically the level of expected technology we have. I'll just add +1 because it's sort of just an average thing. So that would be +5. 6 + 5 is 11. So that means this is B. So that's actually quite advanced, if I recall correctly. Let me hop on to something real quick so I can remember exactly how advanced that means when it comes to the technology status. This particular element when it comes to the technological index is exactly the same as you would find in the sort of like the original Traveler rules. So the level 11 sort of technology means that we do have some pretty decent computers. We don't have artificial intelligence. We do have starships that have basically jump drives. We have not developed anti-gravity technologies to a certain extent yet. Although, of course, that's this sort of like the standard tech level. Obviously, certain things might be a bit different depending upon what sort of the specifics of the world we're talking about. So this world might have more advanced technologies in certain areas. For our next one, for the main world, again, I'm going to be rolling 1d6. We are not getting anything for our starport or size or atmosphere. We are going to be getting +1 for our relatively low population levels, and we are going to be getting +1 for our government, since this is a technocracy. So that's +3 to whatever number I roll. I rolled a 4, +3 is 7. And hopping again back over onto my thing here. Technology of 7. Okay, that can't be. We can't go with that one. We can't go with a technology of 7. We need to at least have a 9. A technology of 7 would not have starships. We need to at least have a level of some... Oh, wait, no, I take that back. No, we can go with that. No, 7's fine. So basically, it looks to me like our main world doesn't really have much of a starport or anything because they're just really exploring space. They haven't even really developed like laser weapons or things like that. Computers are pretty basic. Now, the next thing we need to determine is sort of like the trade codes for these planets. Trade codes, of course, would be things that this planet would typically be expected to do, like when it comes to technology and stuff like that. So again, we have, this is determined based on the size, atmosphere, hydrology, and the population of the planet. So looking at the different trade codes that we at least have on this page, our main world here would be a garden non-industrial world because it has a decent atmosphere and good hydrology and stuff like that, but it has a small population, which means that it does not qualify as an industrial world. Or rather, that means it qualifies as being a non-industrial world. This one doesn't really... This planet, its codes don't really match anything, at least as far as I can see, because its atmosphere is too thin to be any of the sort of garden or agricultural worlds or things like that. And it doesn't have the right type of atmosphere to be considered an industrial world, because industrial means like there's lots of pollution and tainting of the atmosphere and stuff like that. Yeah, and even our main world can't necessarily be considered an agricultural world because it's not. They don't have enough people. We have a decent atmosphere and hydrology, but we don't have enough people. That's the problem. So we can't produce a high surplus of food here. Garden means it's sort of Earth-like, high biodiversity, self-sufficiency. You won't need to import food and stuff and things like that. Non-industrial does mean, however, that the world has too few people to support an adequate manufacturing economy. And so a lot of manufactured goods are going to need to be imported. So basically, this planet is going to probably create a decent amount of food, not necessarily enough to export like huge amounts, but probably enough to trade with this planet. Meanwhile, this planet is not going to be able to, is going to have a much better industrial base than this one. And also, of course, we also have the much more advanced technologies than the other planet does. All right, now the next thing it says is we need to determine if we have any bases in the system, which they could potentially at least be a scout base here on our rocky planet. We need to roll a 2d6 and see if we get a +7. If the world has a Class C starport, then that means we actually subtract 1. So we need to roll an 8 or a better. And I actually rolled an 11, so we do have a scout base on this planet here. So I guess what we'll do real quick is we'll hop over here to our area where we're talking about planetary details, and we'll go ahead and flesh out some of what's missing here. For each of these, I'm going to go ahead and just write in. Oh, no, that's the star. Obviously, the star isn't going to have anything. So I'll just go ahead and write an X there, an X there, and an X there. So for each of these, we'll just roll a 1d6. So here for this planet, I'll just go ahead and show you guys this one here just so you see. So we're just going to do size, atmosphere, hydrographics, and temperature. For this inner rocky planet, so it says here, we'll roll, and we got a 5. So that means that we are size either 1 or 2. I'll just say we're size 1. And we're going to roll for our atmosphere for our rocky planetoid. Now it says +1 if a planetoid, and because we are size 1 or 2, that means we are considered a planetoid because we're big enough. So I rolled a 1. So yeah, basically there's essentially at best a trace of an atmosphere, essentially. Which I believe would just be basically like a 0. Hydrographics, essentially we're guaranteed to have a 0 because I can't roll anything more than that. Actually, no, sorry, a trace should be 1. There should be just the effort to basically itsy bitsy bit of atmosphere here. Now, temperature. It says inner orbit 1 or 2. This is inferno temperature. All the rest of this is obviously going to be 0s, and then inferno, just because it's very hot. All right, and then I'll go ahead and just roll these two off screen real quick, and welcome back. So I went ahead and rolled our ice ball here, which nothing interesting really popped up there. It's just like a frozen itty bitty, super small little thing, and basically it's like, even smaller than Pluto. And then for our Inferno, our Hellhole planet, I actually rolled that. It's actually quite large. Size 9 means that it's significantly larger than Earth, but it's not quite like to a gas giant size. It's pretty big, super Earth. I rolled that we have an exotic atmosphere. We actually have a decent amount of hydrology going on here, but it's also Inferno when it comes to temperature. It's like ridiculously hot. So my guess is that there's some sort of really weird sort of volcanism going on this planet that has resulted in a melted a decent amount of melted, some sort of liquid, maybe not even water, maybe it might be some sort of acidic something or other, because of our exotic atmosphere, likely caused by the combination of size and maybe some, I don't know, something weird going on here. Now, of course, we'd come to naming, so we could go ahead and name all of these different things, and so on and so forth. There is a section here where we talk about different sorts of megastructures and different types of habitats that might exist, including like what sorts of habitation percentages we might expect in certain types of megastructures, like bishop rings or ring worlds or Dyson spheres and stuff like that. Yeah, and that's pretty much the way the Cepheus Universal sort of star system creation system goes. Again, this is very strongly based on the system that existed in the original Traveler. There's been very little changed here. It provides you a lot of really basic information, but you're definitely going to need to build on it. There are some things that it would be nice that this system sort of introduced to try to make planets a little bit more interesting and stuff, but this system does not include those. This sort of basic system from original Traveler and stuff does not embrace some of those, partly because, again, this game was originally developed in the 1970s. A lot of our understanding of the way space kind of works, especially nowadays, was very different 50 years ago. So those are all things to consider. There are definitely more advanced system creation systems that are out there that create more accurate star systems to what we've been observing so far in the atmosphere and in the real world. This has had some slight modifications to it to try to compensate for that, but it's still pretty basic. Anyway, this was again Cepheus Universal that was created based on the Cepheus engine, which of course is based on the 2D6 OGL from Traveler. Thank you all for joining me here today on Hassens County. Don't forget to go out there, rate your itch purchases, enjoy making some planets, and have a good zone.